Hi, today we are going to be showcasing several different mechanics we've added to the Project 3 of CS61B. And first of all, this game is more or less like a maze exploring and memorization game where you have to guide an avatar to the objective, which is an exit, with a limited amount of sight range within a certain amount of steps. Let's start by creating a new randomly generated world, and the first mechanic we see is the additional trail that the avatar leaves behind when it's being moved. And since we designed this game to have a constraint on the amount of steps that the avatar can take before it reaches to the goal, it'll be handy for the player to be able to look back at where they came from, which paths they took, which will help them realize where they were spending or wasting the most amount of steps. And this might also help them realize and optimize their paths to take in future levels. And if the player saves and decides to continue later, the player decides to quit and save and quit. And if we load up the world again, the player's progress and the trail that the player took will also be loaded, like shown here. So the player can, by loading, the player can get another glimpse of where they came from and see how they wasted steps in specific places. The second feature we're introducing is the step counter mechanic, and this feature motivates the player to try to optimize their routes when trying to navigate through each floor while completing the objective, which is to reach the exit. And it motivates players to memorize and construct a shortest path from where they are to the door, because you only get a glimpse of the whole map before you ever move. So when you start moving, then your line of sight will start to apply and you can't see the whole map again. So it also discourages the players from wandering aimlessly in the dungeons, because we slapped on a steps remaining constraint, and which is also the losing condition in the game. So if you run out of steps, like shown here, we have 25 steps left. So if you run out, then the game is over. And another feature that we added, as you may already noticed, are these little carrots that are lying on the ground of this map. And there are two types of carrots. Each do something to your sight range, and each are collectibles. So if we go on ahead and collect these the orange carrots, it will increase your sight range and make the navigating easier. But if you collect these red ones, they will decrease your sight range and make the navigating much harder. So this gives the player more things to look out for and more things to consider when they're initially trying to come up with the optimal route to the objective, which is to the door. So let me just generate a new world and we can see the whole map. So for example, when they're initially trying to consider the optimal route to take in order to get to the door, they might go for some orange carrots if it only costs them a few steps to do so, even though it deviates away from their original path. For example, this one, if we take the optimal path from the avatar to the door, might be to take this route and go here straight, but they might go out their way to grab these carrots in order to increase their sight range. And also they have to decide whether or not to avoid a hallway that contains red carrots or a path that contains red carrots, and by sacrificing more steps, etc. So the carrot collectibles add some additional possibilities as to what the real optimal route to the exit is. And it'll also differ from player to player, since different people might make different decisions, and depending on how important they think the carrots and their sight range is. So for example, if the player is confident in themselves memorizing their shortest path, if they're really good at memorizing and knowing what paths to take, they might not need their sight range. And for players who might be a bit more prudent and think about the advantages they might get from getting a big sight range and completing the floor, because the sight range carries over when you conquer from floor to floor. So like they might grab more orange carrots in the easier floors in order to build up their sight range, in order to have a better chance at succeeding in later floors. So the fourth feature we're introducing is the key door mechanic. So basically, it isn't enough to just find the exit if you want to make it out of the floor. If you go right into the exit, and if we hover over the door, it'll say locked door on the top left because we don't have the key yet, like it says in the top right, so we can't go through the door. So along with remembering where the door is and how to get there, the player would also have to remember where the key is, which takes shape in this flower. So if we get the key, the top right corner will now show you have the key, and we just have to make it to the door with the remaining steps. And as you approach the door and unlock it, we can move onwards to the next floor, and this brings us to yet another mechanic we built, which is the multi-leveled structure of the game. We see that once you've made it out of the first floor, it'll display that we're in the second floor, we're in floor B2, and again, you first get a peek of the whole world, and once you start moving, you'll just have to rely on the sight range you have. And after each floor, you'll get some extra steps as an reward. So I think we ended up at like about 50 steps on first floor, and now we have about 180. And your sight range is also carried over. So for example, if you complete a floor with a sight range of 8, you'll start the next floor with also a sight range of 8. And also notice that you spawn wherever you ended up in the previous floor. So in the previous floor, the door was here, and so for the second floor, you also spawn in the same place. And this is to simulate the levels and the floors design of the game. As in, once you unlock a floor's door, you go down a set of stairs and have to navigate through another deeper area, and hence the floor is one level lower than the previous floor. So if we try to make out level 2, grab the key, we'll arrive at floor 3, and we'll be spawned at the same place as floor 2's door was in. And this is how the multi-level design of this game works.